Okay, you should see my screen now. Can you please give me confirmation of that? Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see the screen. I can see it.
Perfect.
Yep, I
Okay.
can see it.
Great. Okay. Okay, we adjust my screen so I can see you all. Okay, just 1 second. Perfect. Okay. First, natural question in discussing of performance management. What is performance management? What performance management stands for? The first thing we should say about performance management is that as many HR activities, initiatives or functions, there is no standard definition of performance management. Indeed, performance management, it's no single activity, rather it is made up by several HR activities, which are holistically connected in order to generate the way organization manage performance or performance management. We can try to provide a representation of performance management by saying that the set of activities that compose this crucial function for organizations aims to 3 main goals, namely set objectives, improve performance of the whole organization, not only employees and teams, and hold member of the organizations, individuals and teams, accountable for their performance. So these are the 3 macro, let's say, aim of performance management within the organization. We saw that this is a holistic and quite complex process. At its core, performance management embraces some main practices within the organization, which is, as I said, setting objectives, performance review, performance-related pay, and learning and development. We will go through soon. We will go through these main practices, and our first part, it will be a macro identification of what does compose performance management, and then we will step to the second part, in which we will kind of challenge the performance management as a traditionally viewed and carried out. So these are the main practices related with performance management. Let's go through them one by one. Standard of performance and objectives. When we talk about setting performance objectives, we refer to setting performance standards for individuals, departments, and the organization as a whole. So it's not only related to individual performance. Therefore, performance management, we should broaden the view of performance management up to encompassing the whole organization, the business performance, which is the ultimate goal of performance management. How do organizations set their objectives? So there are different ways. Objectives can be represented as a target to be met, or tasks to be carried out within, let's say, a given time frame, rather than ongoing behavioral and performance standards to be met. They may derive, as often they do, from team or organizational key performance indicator. it is a common practice within the organization to rely on objectives, so-called SMART. SMART as I think all of you have somehow heard about SMART objectives, so which usually typically stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely or time-bound. But this acronym space often is used with other word. Anyway, the meaning is more or less the same. So regardless the nature, the objectives should be clearly linked to and support the overall goals of teams and the organization. So generally speaking, we say that there is this strong link between objectives, setting objectives, and what the business as a whole main goals and strategy. This strong link relates both individual and teams objectives. As we mentioned, objectives can be set at team level performance rather than individual level. In many cases, they are combined. So we will see that organization mix together, blend together individual and team objectives or targets. There is no right or wrong formula. Both types can work well, but the important thing is that the choice of setting objective reflects the nature of the work over than the objectives of the organization. So the nature of the work, and we will see soon what this means. It is at the core of the way we set objectives within organization. Also, the choice of setting individual rather than team objectives should take into consideration the impact on the workforce in terms of collaborative behavior within members. So these are all factors related with the way organization set their objectives, way that can be it can vary extremely. So there is no one way in which organizations set objectives. The other item, the other main domain of performance management, as we mentioned, is the performance review. The performance review phase of performance management is a process during which manager assess employees' performance and carry out a discussion on this performance with them. There are different critical factors in reviewing performance, such as to give feedback on performance and monitoring the progress of employee toward the set objectives. Let's say that traditionally, reviewing performance has been, and in many cases, it is still a practice occurring once a year. We will see throughout this webinar what's changing now and what are the critical factors of carrying out such a rigid and once a year practice. Indeed, it shouldn't be this the case, and we will see later why. Performance management should be a regular occurrence within the organization, should be an ongoing process. For example, happening at the end of a work of or every few months, depending on the nature of a person's job. The review can involve face-to-face conversation, 360-degree feedback. Again, the way organization likewise setting targets or goals may vary. So there are many techniques whereby organization review employee performance. Usually, let's underline this point, usually this happens once a year. Many organizations also implement a mid-year, so-called mid-year review. And regarding instead performance-related pay, traditionally and still today, it is common to link compensation or pay to performance of individual or teams. Many organizations have performance-related pay practices, so-called PRP, whereby performance management is intrinsically related to pay reviews. Let's say sector like, for instance, financial or retail. They are sector where performance-related pay it's a must. It's characteristically and inherently connected and integrated within the performance management. Relating pay with performance is a profoundly debated topic, not only within the performance management domain, but also involving the wider range of managerial practices within the organization, not to mention legal aspects. We will go through a specific discussion on reward management during the week ahead. It should be the next topic of our webinar. So, let's start to introduce the core of our discussion today on performance management, the tradition and perception of performance management. I'm sure I would like to listen to you soon about what your perception of performance management is. I'm sure that when you hear performance management, there is something coming across your mind. There are feeling, there are experience, and I'm really glad to share what is your perception of performance management. So the traditional and common perception of performance management is that performance management is a one-way discussion, top-down, unilateral process. So no really well, no nice business card, I would say. Performance management became over time synonymous of mid-annual review, and together with common 3-point performance scale, like meeting expectation, no meeting expectation, exceeding expectation. I assume that these are kind of practices also implemented in your organization somehow. Exactly this kind of practices or slightly different. Performance management, together with its performance improvement plans used to manage underperformance, has been perceived and is still perceived as a, in the worst scenarios, as a form of punishment or threat, pushing people to perform. So there is a quite consistent debate about motivational factor and how the threat side of performance management can push toward performance or can create the counter effect, hampering the employees' performance. The traditional performance management, it may be considered the most critical practice in interpreting the top-down role of managing people in terms of getting things done. So this is what it emerges from the reality of the business landscape. This is what people, employees perceive, generally speaking, about performance management. Soon we will share our mutual opinion, point of view about this and what our perception of performance management is. So let's say that at its basis, the traditional performance management is a retroactive evaluation process, almost completely focused on employees and team past performance linked to administrative decision. Pay rise, disciplinary, there is a whole range of administrative decisions related to the traditional performance management. One of the main characteristics that we should underline of the traditional performance management is its retroactivity. So it's a process that traditionally looks back. So people are assessed for what they have done even 1 year ago. So you can immediately perceive this sort of, let's say, this connection between the current dynamics, volatility of market, speed of market, and change with a process that looks back 1 year ago. So this is by far one of the most critical aspects of performance management and its traditional approach compared with new performance management. Let's call it in this way, the way many professional academics called this new approach, the new wave in performance management. Approaches of this nature, retroactive nature, are still quite common within organizations, despite, sometimes despite the stated values or practices. The most important negative aspect of this kind of approach is that at the end of the day, performance management of this nature miss the ultimate purpose of performance management itself, which is to improve performance. So we should set this as a basis of the topic. Performance management has at its core this objective: improve performance. Among the other things, this requires strong focus on how employees need to develop. This requires, for instance, conversation to identify relevant learning and developing opportunities. So we should start to introduce in ourselves to embed this goal within our performance management designing process. The way we design performance management, the way we implement performance management should be completely informed based on the goal of performance management, namely to improve performance. So now let's slightly introduce these two aspects, focusing on employee needs and development, and conversations to identify learning, development opportunity, and also something else we will see in the second part of this training, this webinar. What should emerge from conversation? So, performance management is no longer, and it shouldn't be longer like this today, retroactive, top-down, unilateral conversation, one-way conversation, simply manager checking out the job done from employee. It shouldn't be this today. This is because performance management is or it should be a two-way communication process. It should be characterized by supportive initiatives and feedback regarding progress toward the agreed objectives, not unilaterally and top-down stated or attributed. Performance management, it's no longer or it shouldn't be longer a manager-led function, but it should require a strong participation of employees, and we will see how. It involves creation of a climate in which individuals and team they feel responsible for the improvement of the business performance. So essentially, people or employees and teams, they should feel that they are contributing to the overall organizational performance, and as well as for their own continuous development. So meeting target should determine this mutual advantage for organization and for employees in terms of continuous development. It must be underlined that performance management is highly reflective of the organizational culture and leadership. So if we want to identify, if we want to have a gauge, if you want to understand organizational culture, about values, about systems, and kind of leadership, most of all, a good way is to have a look at the performance management concretely implemented within the workforce. And these are the two main aspects that we highlighted in the beginning. So being a holistic and continuous process rather than a one-off event occurring once a year or twice a year through the mid-year review. Now, in the beginning, I kind of mentioned that there are organizations probably considered those that triggered this sort of, that someone called performance management revolution. At basis of this, let's call it revolution, there will be there were statements of leading organization that said they were completely completely canceling performance appraisal within the organization, since many organizations started to realize that employees were negatively affected with negative consequences on performance by the performance appraisal. So by the way employees were assessed and evaluated. So they say, you know what, why do we need performance appraisal? So apparently there is no need of, or better, not to implement in performance appraisal. It is better than implement. So this wave, this flow, pushing toward a review of performance management by abandoning performance appraisal started at some point a few years ago. And performance practices until this point have been quite unchanged for many years, even 20 or 30 years, we should say. Now, you can imagine how disruptive this trend started with this first element triggering the shift from the departure from traditional approach in performance management toward a new approach in performance management, starting by erasing one of the main components of performance management, which is the appraiser. Therefore, this debate against the annual appraisal, we may consider it as the starting point. So the first element triggering this shift, whereby many leading organizations define as the performance appraisal as a counterproductive and outdated. Some organizations, therefore, made sensational claims and stating that performance appraisal would ever be definitely removed from the employee practices. Now, regardless these sensational claims and let's say probably radical approach of few organizations, today we are trying to find what element distinguish the new approach in performance management and what evidence on the effectiveness of the new practice are in improving performance as the goal of performance management initiatives, as we stated earlier. Let's say that studies show interesting results that should inform managerial decision in both designing and implementing performance management processes. These studies also challenge so-called false myth within the context of HR in terms of effectiveness of traditional performance management as been implemented so far. What these studies found is that performance management in its structural sense is still a relevant and effective aspect of HR management in dealing with workforce performance, and many components of the traditional performance management are still extremely important and critical in managing employee performance. However, there are significant factors, significant aspects upon which managers should direct their attention in order to make this function suitable for its purpose and the current societal and business dynamic. So we don't erase completely the old way performance management has been carried out, but we question how this practice are still effective, and if not, what are the main elements we should take into consideration in designing and implementing performance management, and what emerged from the business landscape in the recent years. Let's say what the critical factors in performance management are. So the set of important factors impacting on effectiveness of performance management relate with the standard setting and the performance review. So definitely in setting objective, the task to be performed leads to the choice of the objective to be set. This essentially suggests us to review the reliant or over-reliance on SMART goals first. In reviewing performance, the link to administrative purpose gives room to the aim of support employee performance, development and performance. What this mean? Whilst before, performance management was essentially directed to administrative decision, which acted a bit like a threat for employee. Today, this should give space to practice and identification of factors that support employees' development in order to reach the target attributed to them. Regarding instead performance rating biases, let's say that performance rating biases are typically founded within performance management practice. New performance management requires accountability in rating staff, for instance, as well as series of consideration often ignored by manager within the organization in managing performance. And this will be soon listed. Another main characteristic of the new performance management is the ongoing phase. No longer a once a year review, but a feedback, continuous feedback on the performance of employees that are continuously aware of the ongoing in terms of performance. Employees that don't find out at the end of the year how they have performance 1 year ago. So by far, these are the main aspect that we will treat soon in order to define the new approach in performance management. These considerations lead us to a question. Is this the end of performance appraisal, as many organizations claimed? There has been a great debate about performance management in the recent year, as we already stated. In reading some headline, it may appear that appraisal is part of the history. And new trends are reshaping the way organizations design and implement performance management. Based on the relevant sources, today we will challenge the traditional interpretation and perception of reviewing two core aspects of performance management, which is objective setting, and performance appraisal. So this will be essentially the objective for today. So we will analyze what does work and what doesn't in these two main components of performance management: objective setting and performance appraisal. This will be done within the context of the current dynamics. Organizations and employees are substantially unhappy of performance management, the way performance management is designed, the way performance management is carried out, the contribution on performance that performance management carries, performance management that has been even deemed to create the counter effect, namely making performance or employees' performance worse. So this will be the two main aspects of the today discussion. In the meantime, before our break, let's share our let's share our opinions and point of view about performance management and what we said today. Hi, Esther. Nice to see you this afternoon. I hope you are well. Good afternoon. How are you? Are you doing well?
Good, thanks, Sergio.
Oh, great. Good, I'm so happy to see you.
Good to see you, Sergio.
So, in the beginning of our the first part of our webinar, we saw generally what characterizes performance management. And it is important to share among us what our perception of performance management is. We saw that generally speaking, data suggests general disappointment against performance management. Is this also related to your experience? How do you perceive performance management, or how do you implement if you are, whether you are a manager called to set target and or assess employees' performance? What's your relation with performance management? How do you feel performance management for you? Is something that you feel support your career, or simply threat somehow your job or your career? What's your standpoint about this?
Yeah, I think performance management is very important too, and a process for everyone in organizations. And I think that it should be viewed as a form of supporting tool, rather than controlling people or seeking to punish people. In my opinion, most people don't like performance management, but it's a good place for employees development program to be put in place and support to get them from A to B where they need to be, and set new objectives for the coming year. And I think is important. A place to review, a place to reflect, and to improve, and areas that need support, and then the employee can be supported.
Yeah, great. Thank you to share this with us. Yes, definitely. I do agree about the meaning of performance management, that shouldn't be a control tool, which is instead what it represents in the majority of cases, and unfortunately, what it's perceived by employee. And at the end of the day, our managerial activity as HR are effective or less, especially for what is the employee's perception. So regardless if they are well designed or if they adhere to stated values or not. So it's all about how employee perceive performance management. And what you just said is a common perception, which is performance management as control tool rather than a place in which discuss and also a tool used as a support for the employee performance. So this cascade and top-down approach is definitely what frequently emerges in performance management. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you very much. Any other thought, Emmanuel, Afolabi, Kwasi? What about you in terms of NIACNO performance management?
Okay, I well, I just have a bit, but well, it's going to be more of a question because I need you to clarify me.
Yeah.
I'm an IT consultant, but I've worked a lot in government here in the UK.
Great.
And fine, I've worked in the private sector as well.
Right.
I'm just trying to, I don't know, it's beginning to look to me like what Yassa said was very profound, in that performance management shouldn't be a control tool, because it's looking to me like there seems to be a fine line between micromanagement and performance management, because probably some line managers don't know the difference. They don't know where to draw the line. The last place I worked in central government here, we had weekly meetings. I think it happened every Tuesday, where it was some sort of what you might call a sprint meeting, but well, not really that. It was longer than a sprint, because that was where the head of the department would have each and every one of us. It was usually virtual. Once in a while, yeah, it was in a big conference room to know.
How big? How big, if I may ask?
How big is what? The team?
This conference, how big? It was something that...
The conference meeting, well, in that team, the whole department would have been at least, say 15 of us, 15 to 20, no, not 20, say 15, thereabout. Some of us were in Newcastle, some were in London, some were in other parts around the country. So we would have this meeting once every week, where we want to know what are you doing, what are you working on, what are the blockers,
right?
What are the bottlenecks? Basically, it was some sort of, like you mentioned earlier, like objectives, which is another word for setting of team targets. We want to know if we're on track with the target for the team, or if we're on track to being on target at the end of the month or at the end of a period. And then for myself, because I was a consultant in the team, so I reported directly to the head of department. So my appraisal meetings with her was usually once a month, and sometimes I would call for the meeting myself.
All right.
You'll have to excuse me, it's in the civil service, so it may not be as properly structured as a private organization. So we would have those monthly, once a month, or maybe I would call for the meeting. So she'd want to know what's happening, your deliverables, basically to make sure that what I was working on was in line with my job, the description, in line with the objectives of the team. Bearing in mind that she was head of the department, so she used to attend strategic meetings at C-level with the CEOs and
Right.
COOs, where she'll be intimated with the strategic direction of the organization. So she comes back to feed us in those meetings as to the direction the business is going and what changes there are, and then what our target as a team is, where we fall into the big picture, in the strategic direction of the organization. You understand? So then,
yes, I do.
Yeah. So under her, there was another manager who oversees other members of the team, but I reported directly to her. So I just want you to help me clarify: is this performance management? How on track am I with what I'm saying? Because I'm also the assignment I'm working on now is actually based on performance management.
I didn't know that. Is a pure coincidence.
So that's why I made sure
that's why you did show up, Emmanuel. Be honest.
Yes, that's why I showed up. Yes.
Okay, great. So first of all, you find a great fan and supporter of this topic. As my dissertation a few years ago in one of my field of study, which is HR management, master in HR management, my dissertation was in performance management, actually. So this is a topic that really is very broad. Discuss of this topic in one session of webinar is impossible. I simply, in the second part of the webinar, I simply highlighted what I think the main factor in trying to tailoring good performance management, especially regarding these two main components of performance management, the way we define and communicate the targets and the objective, and the way we evaluate, the way we appraise employee, which is one of the most, I think by far is the most delicate part as HR and within the HR domain. So now, regardless of this webinar, Emmanuel, feel free to contact me. We will share. And I also prompt you share your LinkedIn contact. Networking is the most important thing. We are all, regardless if we are student, consultant, employees, networking is fundamental. And any occasion to do networking, especially a path of study, it must be definitely not missed in terms of networking. So feel free to share with me, ask me also outside of this webinar anything about performance management, material, whatever you may need, Emmanuel. I would be extremely happy to share with you whatever I can in terms of performance management, especially this latest absolutely evolution in performance management. So what's if you may synthesize, what would be the main aspect that you would like to know about this trend, this transition between the two performance management, traditional performance management and new performance management that we will soon discuss after a few minutes break?
In terms of the new performance management, how obsolete is the old performance management? Is it? Are we saying that's out of the way, or are there not organizations? I don't know what the new one is.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
We don't even know if this exists. So new performance management, Manuel, is a terminology introduced after this company started. I think it was 2015, 2016 probably, and someone even earlier to abandon completely the performance appraisal. So some companies said, you know what, there will be no performance appraisal whatsoever within the organization. And this created us disruption. Why? Because this acted as a sort of earthquake in terms of performance management. Has been the same for years, ages, 20, 30 years. And so when this happened was quite disruptive in terms of managerial practices, and everybody started to, trying to reconfigure, try to understand if there was this secret recipe. The truth, Emmanuel, unfortunately, is the following. Evidence on data-based improvement deriving from performance management on employee performance are little. There are not a lot of evidences about this, how to configure a performance management that mathematically, leads to a performance improvement. But there are, if you try to fragment, if you try to analyze the single pieces and component of performance management, you may find that performance management contribution in terms of employee performance, there is especially indirect contribution. We will see later what this emerging factor from the new performance management are, and what we should work on to improve our performance management. Now, in terms of how obsolete is, probably performance management, retroactive performance management, once a year review, top-down approach carried out by often manager without training in how to release feedback, how to release, extremely biased performance management. Probably they were outdated already 20, 30 years ago, and nobody realized it. But technically speaking, we are in the time frame of 5 years, 10 years. So in which there is a consistent driver moving away from the traditional approach in performance management, and review interests in the range of elements that we will discuss soon in the second part of the training. So let me not to show you now this, because I want to stay here for the whole training. So we will discuss this in the second part.
All right, I'll be right here.
Thank you so much for your interesting intervention and sharing this experience. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, just a quick question before you carry on. I mean, 25 years ago, we learned about performance management in secondary school, about performance management in the company as a whole, at the corporate level. I know we're talking about HR today. How does that link with the corporate performance management in terms of using balanced scorecard, benchmarking, and all that? Yeah.
So definitely, and this is probably a interesting theory, and the fact that performance management probably has been translated at the HR practice level from what was performance management at corporate level 20 or 30 years ago. And probably this is the way, when this has been translated, human resource management capability, they have kind of got the legacy of this performance management, particularly related to the profitability aspect, but less human, let's say. So there may be a link why performance management for many years has been like this, has been lacking of human angle. Let's see. Regarding what you said, today, performance management is still something encompassing the organization. So it's still something related to the corporate level. And simply the actor have changed in terms of the way we interpret our role, especially at board level, especially at C-level, or at senior managerial level. What emerged a lot, and probably also from Emmanuel words, we can say that today they are much more connected. So performance at corporate level before and performance at individual level from the workforce, now there is a much more direct link. So they are immediately translated downstream, and the downstream immediately influence upstream. So there is this strong connection between corporate performance and performance management somehow with individual and employees performance, things that years ago it was exactly like this. And this is also due to the fact that as also Emmanuel suggested, we are witnessing the manager, let's say we are reducing the layer of manager within the organization. Organizations are getting much more flat. And this creates this dynamism and strong connection between corporate level performance and individual performance, or translation of the corporate decision at the strategic point of view, and the way employees are pushed to behave and to perform. This is due because, as Emmanuel suggested, Emmanuel manager sits directly at close to the alongside the board, and then he relates at the operational level, creating this sort of direct link. So definitely there is much more connection than before. And I assume this is due to the fact that we have much less hierarchy within organization. We are moving toward a pyramid with a long list of managerial function to a dual approach, operational, C-level. Emmanuel, what do you say? What do you think about it? Is this kind of representative of your experience? Or you feel that there are still a lot of in your organization? You said
hierarchies. Well,
yeah.
The hierarchies still exist, but I think the gap is being breached. I think the gap is being breached because where I worked, it was from the COO, the CEO, no, sorry, the deputy director, then the COO.
COO is the chief operating officer. So COO is the person that directs the operation of the organization. So
yes. So the deputy
it may be considered a sort of deputy CEO.
Okay, yeah, sure. So the deputy director, the COO reported to the deputy director. Right. My line manager, we reported directly to the COO. Then I reported directly to her. So the hierarchy still exists, but I think, yeah, rightly said. I think the gap is being breached. It's not getting wider. I think it's getting slimmer. Yeah. But the hierarchies are still there.
Yeah. Yeah, of course there is, but apparently much shorter than before, and the way the strategic side and level of the organization relate and communicate with the workforce is much more direct. So this also as a consequence of the speed of the market. and volatility, pace of the change. So we have a second part quite dense of topic, and I would like to go through all of it. Should we stop for just 5 minutes for a coffee, and we'll be back to dive within the second part of our discussion. Thank you for your intervention. Really much appreciated your intervention and your knowledge and your experience on this topic, and generally speaking under the business point of view. Thank you so much. So 5 minutes. Now it's 6:04 in London and Birmingham as well. Yes, you can confirm. Let's see. We see within 5 minutes. Okay.
So 6:09. Okay.
Okay. Perfect. See you soon. See you soon. 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, guys, here we are. Are you okay? Do you need a few minutes, longer break? Yes, Sir Emmanuel, Afolabi, Nyakno, are you all right?
Yeah, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yes,
Thank you.
right here. Yeah.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you.
Thank you. We are here.
Oh, good, good. Perfect, perfect. So the second part would be quite dense. So let's go quickly through the slides, because I am really interested in listening from you and your opinion about what we will share soon. So let's share my screen with you. Okay. Perfect. Can you see the screen? Is it visible? Are you okay? Can you see?
It's visible, but it's a bit low.
Just 1 second, probably a bit of connection, or I'm okay. Can you see it now? Is it the screen visible? Afolabi?
Oh yeah. Yes. No.
All right.
Yeah, it is visible. You know, more importantly, we have to expand the view from our end to see it clearly.
Okay, perfect. So let's see. Let's stop my camera so you can focus on the video. Is it better now?
Yeah, it's legible enough. I can see it. It's clear.
Oh, perfect, perfect.
For me, I don't know about the rest of the guys.
Okay, I hope you can all see the screen. Anyway, we will also discuss about the content. So this discussion we had earlier will lead us to learn more about how to set objective goal setting in an effective way, and how to run performance appraisal or performance review. So these are the two main blocks of performance management, and these are the main factor which we will focus on in terms of distinguishing, in terms of identifying when we talk about a new performance appraisal and what new approach in performance appraisal require us to do. The ways and the consideration we will highlight to generate essentially this should be the aim of new performance management, generate a positive response from the employee when we implement performance management, as well as dealing with biases in performance evaluation, therefore pursuing the ultimate goal of performance appraisal, namely improving people and consequently organizational performance. So these are the main aspects we will deal with in terms of achievement that the new performance management aims to. Goal setting and performance appraisal. Let's exchange some general consideration about the two main blocks that made up the performance management function within organization. We said that over the past decade, ESB demonstrated that goal setting is a motivating factor by itself. Namely, the way we set goals, is a driver of performance in itself. The way we set goal affect employee performance positively or not. It affects performance outcome. And this is simply the way we set goal. this aspect is particularly overlooked within performance management, especially performance management of traditionally view as a top-down approach. However, goal setting can have a counter effect over performance, especially when whether it is overused. The key point to highlight is that goal settings, generally speaking, is a powerful tool, but it must be handled with awareness. The positivity or negativity of its effect largely depend on the context. So regarding appraisal, instead, especially formal appraisal, this has been put in the middle of the debate regarding traditional and new performance management, as we discussed earlier. We may say that performance appraisal discussion led to the performance management revolution. What has been found, indeed, is that performance appraisal also act as a contribute factor for performance. Over the past decades, performance appraisal has been largely accompanied by, I would say, a blind reliance on feedback process. However, likewise, goal setting, performance appraisal, especially when feedback process come alongside with it, can have the opposite effect. Therefore, as a key point, we will highlight that whether generally performance appraisal tends to be a valid factor in improving performance, in many cases, it generates the opposite result by decreasing performance of employee. This is why awareness on these processes is required in order not to give for granted the contribution of these practices on performance, regardless the contextual evolution and deep understanding of certain dynamics that we will soon discuss. So goal setting, what's behind effective goal setting? Are all goal setting the same? Is the work we carry out today the same? Or has the work and the way we work evolved in the past decades? These are all questions we should ask in approaching the way we set targets. The discussion today will focus on appropriateness of the most used, most spread approach in setting goals within organization at any level, namely smart goal setting, as we discussed earlier. So we saw that the way we set goals, the way we set target, influence performance in itself. Now, SMART goal, often SMART is the acronym, as we said, of different words, but generally refers to goal being of the specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound nature. There is a good number of evidence showing that generally clear and specific goals make a positive contribution to performance rather than non-specific goals such do your best or other kind of goal not linked with numerical or quantitative measure. But the question is, let's consider that SMART objectives as being one of the key elements of performance management of the traditional way. So there is this over-reliance on SMART objectives. The question is, does SMART goal setting always produce a good impact on performance? Or there are cases in which it may happen the opposite. There are two factors impacting over this important question that as a skilled HR manager, we should ask ourselves. First, when SMART goals are effective. And second, how the work is evolving in terms of tasks performed by employees? These are two important questions in understanding if SMART goals are still at the core of performance management, regardless, used as a key, universal key to open every door. We saw during the last webinar that one of the main drivers of change in talent acquisition is the automation and artificial intelligence. Of course, machine learning and everything else. They are literally reshaping the way companies approach the recruitment process. Smart. Why did I mention this parameter? SMART goals, together with challenging goals, are proven to be effective in producing a positive impact on employee performance. But when this occurs, when employees' tasks are quite straightforward, linear tasks. Conversely, it has been proven that when tasks are complex, SMART goals and challenging goals are counterproductive. So it's about what is the task object of performance management? Is it a straightforward task or is it a complex task? And this applies to various aspects of goals, including what outcomes should be achieved and the time frame of them. Again, the reason why we mention how the talent acquisition is changing, the recruitment is changing from recruitment to talent acquisition, and why SMART goal must be reconsidered in light of the new context, is that we are stopping to do repetitive and routine tasks. Now, automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, they are even substituting, they are even replacing tasks usually normally performed by human beings. So it's quite over the time in which we do routinary repetitive jobs. So the question is, SMART goals are extremely suitable when tasks are straightforward, but are still these the kind of tasks that we carried out in the day-to-day activity? Think about your own performance and those of colleagues you know. How do you think these performance are and tasks that you daily carry out straightforward? Now, establish that there is no right and wrong approach in setting goals, like in many opposite with each other approaches in human resource functions. The question is, how is the work evolving? Is the tendency showing that we are going toward simple tasks and repetitive activities during our day-to-day routine? It seems not really like this. All these kind of tasks are attributed to machine, computer, and the human beings required to carry out tasks that computers, at least so far, cannot. So the degree of coordination, number of actions making up the employees' tasks, the dynamism of the workforce and business landscape reflecting on the employees' tasks, and the context, of course. These are all elements suggesting the degree of complexity of a task. And these are the parameters, among the other, that we should assess before blindly relying on SMART goals. Why? Simply because in these cases, generic goals work better than specific ones. In these cases, where problem solving, when social skills, when emotional intelligence, when a multitude of tasks blend are required. There are other types of goals that best fit in order for goal setting to contribute to employee performance rather than SMART goal. And they are behavioral and learning goals. They are more effective. Generic goals pushing to do our best, they are more suitable than performance goals, namely SMART goals, when it's about complex tasks. Therefore, before setting goal, we are called to navigate within the nature of the tasks of our employee, and only subsequently choosing what kind of goal to assign. Therefore, the SMART goal approach, typical of the traditional performance management, is the first element to be reviewed. Again, in setting our goal, involvement in goal setting, self versus externally generated goals. Setting no specific goals does not mean freedom in setting their own goals. Together with the hype of performance revolution, it came the idea that letting employees setting their own goals is an effective way to improve performance. The evidence suggests the opposite, highlighting that performance management from the past is not to be abandoned in favor of a magic recipe. Again, as alignment with business strategy and objectives, this is one of the major characteristics of performance management. Self-generated goals easily result in a departure and misalignment of the performance tasks and activities against the overall objectives. So as you can see, these trends or new trends in new performance management are assessed against traditional approach. And what does emerge is that it's not that there is a shift. Okay, we abandon completely old practices and the performance management as traditionally we know it in order to welcome a totally different approach. No, but we question ourselves in order to make our new performance management suitable based on the trends, workforce trends, dynamic and needs of the workforce and organizations. The last factor to be analyzed in goal setting initiatives is the implication of the employee's orientation on the effectiveness of the way we design goals. And this is another parameter characterizing the new approach in goal setting and performance management, and one of its main block, which is goal setting. So if we ignore our workforce, if we ignore what the business needs are, and therefore we don't recruit or we don't retrain, we don't reskill, we don't our workforce, ignoring what is the employee's orientation, we are undermining our performance management. Employees' orientation plays a crucial factor in terms of response of the employee to the approach in goal setting. We saw that the workforce trend, what workforce trends and recruitment trends are during the previous webinars. For a long time, decades, organizations have struggled in striving to hunt high performance employees. But what is the trend today? What kind of requirements are organizations looking for in hiring a workforce according to what we saw so far in terms of workforce trend? Generally speaking, there are two main types of orientation within the workforce, namely learning orientation and performance orientation. So let's simplify, let's make it easy. We have two kinds of employee, and even me, we have two kinds of orientation in approaching our task. learning oriented or performance oriented. Whilst the first category of employees are motivated by learning new things, the second category of employees are motivated by doing better than others, competitive behavior. Again, there is no right or wrong in being one of or another, you know, showing one of or another orientation. There is nothing wrong. But this has got significant implication on the result of our goal setting approach. Therefore, knowing what the objective and strategy of the organization are, knowing our workforce and its orientation is of particular relevance, since regardless the appropriateness of our goal setting, the result will be tremendously affected by the mentioned employees' orientation. Therefore, what we need to do is not only select the most appropriate nature of goal setting, and we saw that this relates with the complexity of the tasks carried out by the employee, but we are also and especially called to understand the workforce and its traits, increasing the awareness of our employee towards their own orientation and whether it's needed to work on it to increase all the area of their own capabilities. So as you can see in goal setting, there are nuances so far kind of escaped from the focus of performance management, unilateral top-down approach. You know, there are all these emergency from the workforce dynamics that push us to be much more sophisticated in goal setting, much more sophisticated than before. And this is what concerns goal setting facet of the performance management. Again, feedback and goal setting. Feedback will be one of the main aspects in performance appraisal too, but also in goal setting, both goal setting and performance appraisal are inseparably linked with process of feedback that should generally characterize good performance management. Indeed, studies show that goal setting featured by feedback positively impact on performance. Feedback in goal setting particularly means data and monitoring progresses at also in the corporate level. The discussion on performance appraisal and what saving from the past and what changing from traditional approach focuses on few main areas, 4 main areas, namely the impact of feedback on performance, the general approach on assessing employees, so our the systems we implement to assess employee performance, the performance rating format, and the impact of personality and biases in performance management. So these are the main aspects considered in order to try to define the characteristics, what should characterize new approach in performance management, what must be reinterpreted from the past, but saved from the past in approaching this second key component of performance management, namely the way we assess the employee. So far we discussed about the way we set objectives and goals. Now we are in the second part, the way we assess the employees. We mentioned that feedback is a crucial aspect in the effectiveness of performance appraisal. But does feedback always add effectiveness to the process? is almost considerable like a synonymous? And if not, in which cases, or in other words, how feedback should be in order to increase employee performance? To answer this question, we should not focus initially on feedback itself, but once again, we should focus on employees. We should focus on workforce. Indeed, what makes feedback a positive tool, an effective tool, or conversely and paradoxically, an element negatively affecting performance? It's about employees and employees' perception of fairness in the feedback process. So far, the traditional way we approach performance management shows that feedback process, kind of feedback process accompanying the performance management initiatives and activities. Even rare feedback, like for once a year or a couple of times a year, but there are feedback. And generally speaking, likewise, SMART goal, feedback is a kind of evergreen topic within the performance management field. So we always feel that feedback is important, is necessary, is an important component, and that's true. That's true. But feedback can also be show counter sides and can be counterproductive for the organization. And as mentioned, the first element that should characterize feedback in order to be effective and not counterproductive is the perception of fairness in the process. What this means, or what this requires? This requires that feedback process must be assessed against certain criteria. So these criteria are usually called procedural justice. We refer to procedural justice about as the dynamics and what characterizes the decision making and the procedure deriving from it. Are they consistent? Are accurate? Do they present biases? Are they open? Do they welcome the employee voice? So this is procedural justice within the decision-making and related procedures process. Now, if the employees, they don't perceive fairness within the process of feedback, so if they don't perceive this procedural justice, the feedback process became to be counterproductive. So what we always give for granted, that feedback is helpful feedback. Feedback starts to play against our self. And translating at managerial level, this means that we should consider first employees' reaction to performance appraisal, which is often almost always neglected. The employee reactions to the performance appraisal is critical in determining whether performance management implemented in terms of feedback will have a positive impact or less on performance. This especially means at the practical level, follow-ups after performance conversation in order to understand the employee's reaction. Focusing on the follow-up should be, as mentioned, on perceived feedback on the appraisal process. So in order to understand whether our feedback is effective or not, we need to understand this. We need to follow up. We need to understand how employees perceive the whole process and let data about this process emerging and work on this data in order to adjust the procedural justice perception. Otherwise, our feedback, it would be not only neutralized, but he became a negative card to play within our performance management and performance appraisal. So employee perception of fairness of feedback. This is the key, and this is the what a review performance management approach asks us to do. Again, in assessing employee, external evaluation versus self-assessment, new performance management, some new trends and hypes, sometimes suggested self-assessment as a new way of increasing employee performance. Indeed, the main factors characterizing the quality of the appraisal of assessment lies on the employee voice, as we said, namely to what extent employee feel to be heard. Now, in terms of who should assess employees' performance, the external assessment is still, this from the past, is still considered the most effective way of assessing employee performance. But what is changing and what should characterize a change from the past is that performance management is a two-way process of communication rather than a one-way communication only. At managerial level, the appraisal should constitute a spontaneous two-way conversation. This doesn't mean that employees set the target by themselves, as we see, but even regardless the implementation of the given inputs, employees must feel to be heard. Kind of like earlier mentioned in terms of performance management as the place in which to identify what the kind of support are needed for employee to reach their objectives. This is it. The external appraisal and the effectiveness of external assessor is strictly related to the perception of a two-way process of communication. So employees must feel to be heard during the performance appraisal. And this is at practical level, regardless if the organization implements or not what the employees propose or what the employee would like. But the most dramatic and negative effect is to perceive that it's a unilateral one-way communication and the employee's voice has no minimally place, room within the performance appraisal. The rating methods. The rating methods in performance appraisal, the traditional approaches in performance management tendentially sees manager asked to rate employees according to a kind of rigid and self-considered exhaustive rating scales. This is often perceived as unfair from employees who see, among the other things, that this reduces, is reductive of the uniqueness every employee represents, especially when short rating scale are used. As we mentioned, the typical 3-point scale, meeting expectation, non meeting expectation, exceeding expectations. It may be difficult, particularly it may overload managers to release appraisal avoiding guided rating scales, but this would offer several advantages. However, one thing that HR manager can easily do in designing rating methods in order to overcome this problem in performance management, which is employees perceive that the shorter and the rigid the scale, the rating scale is, the more unfair is perceived the process of the evaluation. Therefore, at least if whether it is not possible, the idea would be totally, set it free, the manager, in order to assess individually and without rigid scale the employee's performance. But one thing that HR manager can easily do in designing rating methods is to increase the number of categories under which classify the employee performance, not only the traditional 3 categories, at least 5, 6, 7 categories, minimum 5 these studies show in terms of effectiveness. So the rating scale should be less rigid. If removed, is even better. At the end of the day, what is performance appraisal about? What performance appraiser focus on? Regardless if our performance management set learning goals for a complex task, or regardless if our performance management takes into consideration employees' orientation, like we said, regardless whether our performance appraiser gives employee the feeling to be heard. What does performance process focus on? Traditionally, when it's about performance, what managers do? They focus on employees' weakness, setting with different degree of administrative related influence, let's say like this to be elegant, the steps to address the so-called areas of improvement. So this is one of the main characteristics of the traditional approach in performance management from organization, focusing on the employee weakness, on what went wrong, in order to set performance improvement plan and blah, 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 and all the other things that employee hates and makes performance management not only not effective, but even counterproductive. New performance management approach denotes a fundamental shift from this kind of approach. In order to improve employee performance, which is the ultimate goal of any performance management, the performance management process, particularly the appraisal, shouldn't focus on employees' weakness, but should focus on employee strengths and should build on these strengths, should make them the starting point to build on the next steps of the employee development. So this is one of probably more profound change in approaching the way we appraise employee, focusing on the strengths of the employee. It gives much more result, emphasize the strength of a person rather than highlight and work on weaknesses. Sometimes weaknesses are are so rooted that are difficult to obtain significant changes, when instead improvement of area of excellence, of inclination, orientation are much more effective in managing employee. So in pursuing this aim, managers must be re-educated to stop focusing on employee weakness, often also, I would say, with an outdated paternalistic approach. They should rather focusing on identifying what the areas of excellence of employee they manage are. Rating biases. Again, this is probably one of the most delicate side of performance management and what new emergence in performance management suggests. The bias-related matter is of critical relevance within any performance management, and it should be the first element to focus on from organization, since biases are deemed to neutralize, to invalidate any well-designed performance management. So if we rely on the fact that designing a good performance management is in itself, also implement it is in itself enough to obtain the result, good result and motivating employee performance, neglecting the of working on biases that affect performance management, this is probably the most glamorous, the biggest mistake we can accomplish. So first we have to work on reduction. I know biases cannot be totally deleted, but we have to work on containing them, on reducing as much as possible. The first, it's important to divide biases in performance management according to the source of the bias. Indeed, biases related issues in performance management and performance appraisal process can derive from both the person appointed to rate the employee, usually the manager, and can derive from the employee as well. Strangely, we will see how. Also, this kind of the biases can derive from the process implemented in itself, and they are called systemic related bias. So let's go through these three sources of biases affecting performance management and often overlooked in the past. Totally, majority of these kind of biases have been overlooked in the past. The error biased related coming from, let's start with the biases related to the person appointed of the appraisal, often the manager, the line manager of the employee. This kind of biases come from this source. They occur when an employee, usually the manager, assess another employee. These kind of biases are the most terrible, the most hostile to be taken. It's therefore particularly important to be aware of them. These biases are the way manager tends to assess employees, increasing the degree of severity with increasing of the power of managers. So when managers get more power, they start to become more severe again toward the employees that they manage. This is the first source of bias. I selected the most relevant and common one. Managers that receive positive assessment tend to assess employees in a more positive way. A sort of transfer of good assessment. When managers evaluate the performance of the employee that were hired, thanks to manager decision, they tend to assess these employees more positively rather than employee regarding who manager was involved in the hiring process. Personal appreciation of the employee from the manager leads to positive appraisals. I like more this person because reflect my culture, because of, I don't know, every kind of other things may link and may determine appreciation between the who rates the employee and the employee. Again, racial related bias. People tend to assess in a more positive way people of the same ethnicity. So white people, they assess better white people than black people. Black people assess better black people than white people. Indeed, study says that there is a slightly more bias between white people than black people. Namely, black people rate better white people than black people toward black people. So white people are worse under this kind of bias than black people. But still, we rate better people of our own ethnicity. And this is a bias, often unconscious bias. We don't know consciously that we are doing this, but we do. This is the importance of the awareness. Be aware of, and then working on it. Working on a manager. So we are HR manager. What do we do in order to see whether there is this connection? Data analytics, for instance. Let's see how the people rate people within organization, especially large organization. And let's see if there is a correlation between the fact that white people, they rate better white people and black people rate better black people. This may be an idea. It may be strange, or it may sound strange, but biases in the appraisal process can arise because of employees' influence over their own appraisal. So biases are not only from who gives the feedback, biases are also from who receives the feedback. How? Organizational citizenship behavior. Organizational citizenship behavior. These are so-called extra role behavior. Employees engage in actions like helping colleagues and making suggestions for the interest of the organization in a way in order to influence their own evaluation. Another form of bias, employee related, is the ingratiation or self-promotion, which occurs when employees offer to help their manager and when employees work on making themselves appear more competent, or they promote their manager by making them more aware of their successes. So these are kind of behavior from employees that influence and create biases within the appraisal processes. Lastly, it must be considered that systemic sources of bias in appraisal ratings, namely those embedded in the adopted process from the organization. One of these issues has already been discussed, which is the forced guide and the rigid rating scale with a low number of points used to assess employees' performance. This is one of the most common source of bias within the performance management and traditional performance management. So therefore, there are two aspects to be assessed against this kind of emergence from the workforce and study workforce related. Another source of issue is the means used to give the appraisal. Paradoxically, the way we communicate our appraisal by email, verbally, in written way, on paper, strangely, the better result is to using written, so paper in giving evaluation. This is what emerged from a relevant study. Anyway, this is a kind of an aspect that may conflict with new generations and culture of new generation. So use of paper, it must be considered. It may be challenging and it may conflict with, especially with new generation. Lastly, the most important aspect, accountability within the process. This is one of the most critical factor, together with training in performance appraisal from people that we deliver the appraisal. So these are four systemic related source of biases within our process. So for now, before we exchange our point of view in a Q&A session, I would like to thank you in advance for your participation and intervention and sharing this important experience and knowledge. Yes. Let me go back. Here we go.
Okay. Earlier on, you talked about. I think, if I remember, you did speak about the regularity of performance appraisals.
Yeah.
Where I work, like I said, I think it was every Tuesday, if I remember. Every Tuesday we had the weekly meetings, then individual appraisals, because it was like appraisals was done both for individual team members and appraisal as a team.
Right.
So for the team, well, yeah, that weekly meeting was more like that, yes. But then the one-to-ones I had with my line manager was done every month, or maybe once a month, or every other month, or in the next couple of weeks, or no, I would say at least once a month. How regular should these performance appraisals be now? And what could be the knock-on effect of the kind of appraisals I had, which was not as regular? I don't know what the regularity is, and if it's like once a month, how regular should it be? And if it's not so regular, what would it cost?
Good question, Emmanuel. Let's say that we are, of course, discussing only about the quantity and not the quantity, because you can meet employee every day, but if the quality of the appraiser doesn't reflect what parameter, also some of them discussed earlier, is not about the quantity but the quality. In terms of quantity, strictly speaking about quantity, there is no number. Also because this is also related to the nature of the work. What kind are you working in? A project-based organization, a multi-divisional organization with a lot of delegation? Is this a corporation of many business units? So there are many factors influencing the number of meetings and how this ongoing process is carried out in terms of quantity of meeting and a moment within which appraise employee and give employee support. But let's say that generally speaking, performance appraisal of traditional sense, they only had one, maximum two, the mid-year review and the end-of-year review performance appraisal. And this is definitely generally considered not enough at all. So only two performance appraisal, only two meeting with the employee in order to discuss of their needs, discuss of the ongoing process. No. Theoretically speaking, you are talking in your case in a good, very good schedule of performance appraisal. Definitely now is about the quality of the meeting you have with your manager, and if these reflect your expectation, if you feel to be heard during this process, if this process you feel that gives you support in identifying what you need in order to achieve the objective that are given to you. Does it make sense? But generally speaking, the schedule you are highlighted earlier, I would say they are excellent. Yeah, really,
so
definitely.
In terms of quality and quantity of performance management, you're talking about the quantity is regularity, the quality is the results, the output off the back of the appraisal. Is that what this is?
Yeah, but what about the input? What about yourself? What about are you heard in the process? This is because the core of this meeting shouldn't be take the stock of the situation in terms of how many contract did you achieve during this meeting, during this month, or how many? No, this is absolutely reductive. The content should be kind of starting from how do you perceive this appraisal process in terms of does it work, it doesn't work in terms of fairness. It should be what do you need in terms, do you agree with this objective, or is there something that you think is they are overestimated, underestimated? Is something that do you think you have enough resources in terms of knowledge, in terms of means, in order to achieve this? And if not, what do you need to achieve this? So these are the kind of point that should be discussed in a performance appraisal. Not only, you know, okay, so you had to
not only performance targets.
Not only performance targets. Performance targets are set, and they can be set even once a year, but performance appraisal and ongoing performance management, performance management should be an ongoing process during which you identify, first of all, even before assessing the employee performance, strictly speaking, identify which kind of support the employees need in order to achieve the targets that have been assigned. So this comes before the assessment, because if you don't assess the employee the resources and the suitability of this goal in terms of against the employee capabilities, employee resources, what are we talking about? So this is the point, and this is what should distinguish approaches, traditional approaches in performance management. This is the work, let's get it done. You know, these are the objectives. This is what you have, you know, and you undergo passively this objective without any, you know, right of discussing or negotiate or putting forward what your needs are in terms of achieving those objectives. Instead, today we are as HR called to, first of all, identify and agree the objective with the employee rather than unilaterally attributing objective, and setting this objective according to the task carried out by the employee without, you know, overusing, as we said, smart objectives for any kind of task, smart, measurable, and there is no measurability, there is nothing in complex task whereby uniqueness of human being is emphasized, and creativity and knowledge are requirements in order to achieve those the objectives deriving from this kind of tasks. So therefore, the way we set goal should be considered the tasks of the employee and should be reflected within the employee appraisal and the identification of the resources possessed by the employee in order to achieve the goal that the manager set for the employee. So as you can see, it's much more than meeting the employee in order to take the stock of the situation, in order to, okay, let's see now where we are. It's much more. Let's see how now where how Emmanuel is going in terms of support I'm giving to Emmanuel to you know, therefore the managerial side of the performance management is shifting from above to below the employee, in supporting the employee, not in judging the employee, you know, from above. Okay, you didn't meet this target this month, next month, you know, or you don't get the 2% pay rise for this year because this is you know, out of the new approach in performance management, and this is what you know, according to study, affected and is still affecting employee performance. So this passive role of employees within the performance management process, and performance management used as a Yasser suggested as a control tool rather than support tool. Performance management, this is the main shift of performance management within organization, is no longer, and it shouldn't be longer a control tool, but a tool whereby managers support employee in achieving performance. Therefore, strength-based approach rather than weakness-based approach in assessing employee performance, working on where the employee excels in something, doing something, rather than, oh, you didn't do well in this, you didn't do well in that. These are the main elements in distinguishing performance appraisal approach of the traditional way and performance appraisal approach of the new way that supposedly offers better responses to the current workforce and business dynamics. I hope I satisfied your question, but feel free to put forward other consideration.
Yeah, thank you. Just to contribute to the discussion.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Basically, what you said, basically at the part, in our organization, for instance, we have one performance appraisal at the end of the year to look at what has gone on in the past year, what the employee has achieved and what has not been achieved, strengths and weaknesses. But also we link that to the following year's strategic objectives of the business as a whole as well, and then set the objective from there. So once the new objectives and targets are set for the following year, we can review them. We review them monthly in what we call supervision, operational wise. So in a supervision, we look at the goals and the support for the own objectives and to support the overall corporate objectives of the business. And then alongside, if the employees are not meeting those goals, you set new employees to meet the bigger goals, overall for the whole organization. That is really exactly what you have talked about, which is more operationalized.
Yeah. Thank you, Yasser. Let's say, of course, one appraisal a year. How do you feel, in terms of being assessed for something that dates back 1 year ago? Also, especially considering now, the dynamics of the workplace, the volatility of the markets, the pace of change, and this is the point. Once a year, discussing of something is difficult. Organization, they don't plan anymore, neither in 5-year time scale. Organization, they plan daily, almost daily. So it's difficult to contextualize performance management based on a 1 year. Even in traditional market, saturated market, and it is difficult not to believe that the business dynamics and workforce dynamics do not conflict with a once a year performance appraisal. And this is, probably, to be kind of argued because of what we said. The connection within next year, what happens next year, and we link, of course, the expectation of employees' performance based on business strategy translated at operational level within, thanks to the line manager and line manager. That's good. That is a good process in order to align employee performance to business needs and performance and objectives. But again, it's a bit difficult to imagine that there may be a macro, appraisal, but at least micro performance appraisal throughout the year. What happens, for instance, in Emmanuel's organization once a month is great, but of course, this meeting should, as we said, have a different nature in terms of not only checking how the employee is going in terms of meeting the target given, but understanding the employee's voice, needs in order to perform, in order to tailor learning and development activities and initiatives, for instance, to making empower employees and giving employees the needed skills to achieve those objectives. So this is more or less. Afolabi, is there anything from you? Is there anything you want to share? Something you want to discuss about? Any question? Have you? Apparently not. No problem. No problem. If there is something, feel free to.
I was wondering how.
No, there's nothing. Nothing from
this.
me. But it's been quite interesting, and I'm actually learning from you all, and I'll bid on that. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. Sorry, Manuel, you were saying something.
Yeah, I was wondering, the slides you used, do we have access to the slides, or it's just for your use?
Oh,
can I have the slides, and how can I reach you?
Oh, boys, yeah, I didn't prepare slides for to be shared at this time.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Which
that's fine.
But in the past I've done. But as far as I'm concerned, and I can signpost this request from you. You can ask to share the this webinar. You can ask to receive this webinar from the London School, yes, of Business Research. So definitely you can have the slides and the content. I think so. Anyway, I can definitely signpost this to the school. Definitely.
Okay.
And by the way, if give me 1 second, so we share. I would like to share my LinkedIn account. So for anything, feel free to contact me, share with me your knowledge, discuss about business and everything is related to HR. I would be very happy of sharing with you point of view, knowledge, everything.
Yeah, you can also share your email address, if that's okay.
Yes, of course, it is on my LinkedIn profile.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
So feel free to connect with me. I would be glad.
Sure will.
Okay, guys.
Okay. No problem at all.
I definitely assume you will be all with me on the 19th to discuss of reward management. Yasser, give me confirmation. And I would really appreciate to meet you on Wednesday, the 19th at 5 o'clock to discuss reward management. So a topic definitely related with performance management. Therefore, 5 o'clock, I invite you for next webinar.
Wednesday.
Yeah. I already sent you.
Definitely.
Sorry, I already sent you an invite.
Oh, perfect. Okay. I will confirm.
I think
I will confirm.
LSBR will always send us an invite for that lecture. So.
Yeah, definitely. And the other meeting will be on Friday. On Friday, we have the last appointment of this series, and hopefully we have other occasion, to discuss about strategic management or HR related the topics. So I'm sure there will be other occasion following this beautiful series that we carried out thanks to the London School of Business and Research. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you. I'm honored of share with you this topic, and
Thank you very much.
especially for learning from you, your experience.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's been a great session. All right, guys.
Great,
Yes, sir. And Afolabi. Cheers.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Cheers. Bye, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah,
see you Wednesday.
Thank you.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Afolabi. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye, gentlemen.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.